Welcome to Highline Excel class number 14. Hey, if you want to download this workbook and follow along, click on my YouTube channel and click on my college website link and you can download the workbook week 3. Hey, if you're in the class, enrolled in the class, just go to our week 3 website. Hey, this video and in fact the next 4 or 5 videos, we're going to talk about data analysis. And so the first thing we have to talk about when we're talking about data analysis is data. Here's a data set. It is set up correctly, and there are 7 rules here for how to set up your data. Let's take a look at these 7 rules. The first row has field names with formatting that is different from the rest of the data. You got to have field names. You don't necessarily have to have formatting that's different, but it certainly helps. No blank field names. Columns are called fields. Rows are called records. You can't have any blank columns. No blank rows, and you have to have a blank row or column and or Excel's column headers between the data set and all the rest of the data. So there it is. You can download this workbook and have that list. I'm going to show you examples of all of the bad data setup which can cause problems. But first, why do we have to follow these rules? Hey, because things like sorting and filtering and pivot tables and subtotals don't work unless your data is set up this way. Let me just show you an example. If you have it set up this way, it's so easy to sort. You right click in one cell in the data set, and in 2007 you can point to the sort, and there it is. Just like that, it sorts. That doesn't work if you have blank field names or columns inserted, etc. Another thing is pivot tables, and I'll go through how to do this later, but notice when you invoke a pivot table, it's looking at that whole data set. Again, if you didn't have if you had blank columns and blank rows or even data right next to the data set, it wouldn't work. So here's your pivot table, right? And just like that, we can count how many cars of each were sold instantly. And it all comes from the fact that you have to have your data set up correctly. Let's look at some bad data. Here's a situation where, and I haven't read over here, you have a missing field name, and that causes lots of trouble. So you don't want to have a missing field name. Another one, this one, completely wrecks the data set. You can't have a column inserted. You shouldn't even have blanks like this. That causes a pivot table, for instance, to switch from the default sum to count. That's easy enough to fix, but you shouldn't have blanks if you can avoid it, and you definitely cannot have blank columns. Similarly, you can't have blank rows. And finally, this is a big mistake lots of people make. You can't have data right next to it. You can see here I have a note. If that note is next to and touching a cell in the data set, then it becomes part of the data set and messes things up. Also, you can't have totals at the bottom. Much better ways than adding a sum function here using a pivot table or subtotals or something like that. So the rule is, if I want that note, I'd have to insert, right? And I'm going to clear this column. So you have to have a blank column between that and this. Same with here, right? Click Insert. Right? Nothing there. So when this data set is free floating, you can see there's some row headers, some column headers, which are fine. It can be touching those. But any other data in your sheet cannot be touching that data set. Let me show you a keyboard shortcut. I'm going to Control ZZ. That's a keyboard shortcut. The keyboard shortcut to highlight your data set, and let me go back to this good data set right here. My cursor is in one cell. If you use Control asterisk and asterisk on the number pad, you see how it highlights the whole table? Let me do that again. Control asterisk. That's a great trick. Now, that highlights the whole table using IntelliSense, and pivot tables and subtotals and sorting and all of those data analysis features also does that little in memory Control asterisk to highlight the table. That's why if you have a blank column like this, if I Control asterisk, that's what sorting will do. That's what pivot table will do. It'll only grab part of the data. So finally, to sum it up, you definitely, if I was here and I was a pivot table, I would go Control asterisk, and it would highlight this, and then think that's part of the data set. So make sure you follow all 7 rules, and then we can do all of our amazing features coming up. for data analysis. All right, see you next video.